Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumbert, editor at MS Dynamics World. On this episode, we are talking about the connected worker and what it means to empower people on the front line of business with purpose-driven technology. My guests on this episode, Tordi and Mark Laatz of enVista, tell us about their work with organizations that are looking to empower employees with the right devices and solutions to improve customer experience, industry compliance, and worker satisfaction. This episode is sponsored by enVista, and we dive into the integration of Microsoft Teams and Dynamics 365, RFID asset tracking, voice automation, and how the different elements come together in successful connected worker solutions. Mark and Chris also share project experiences focused on this technology and how it's improved outcomes. All right. Well, Chris, Mark, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here. Could we start by just having each of you tell us a little bit about yourselves and the type of work you do with your clients? Chris, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thanks, Jason. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I am a manager of the technology solutions practice over here at enVista. I have a 20-year history and passion that really can be summed up by what I love to do is enhancing the worker experience through technology and devices. And simply, that's what I've been doing for the past 20 plus years. And what's great about enVista specializes in the areas where this stuff all plays in. So we do supply chain strategy consulting, facility design work on warehouses. We have a whole team that implements warehouse management implementations. We also have a great Microsoft practice that brings us here today that implements D365 warehousing. And this is a great place for mobile and edge solutions to play. And these devices are a critical component to all the solutions that we work on. Mark?
Thank you. And thank you, Jason, for the opportunity here to have this discussion. I really appreciate it. My name is Mark Laatz. I, too, am in the technology solutions practice here at enVista. But I'm a solutions architect. And what I focus on is more in regards to enterprise mobile computing and edge technology. These are really kind of more or less purpose-built Android mobile computers that help support applications like D365 warehousing. But I work with our clients to find that right match of, the device to their requirements, because essentially, really, that mobile device, that enterprise mobile device, really becomes that core base to support the applications and their functions. And, having that newer technology in the end user's hands is very important in today's age, even for employee retention. So it's a great solution set, both from an application side as well as the knowledge from the hardware side.
All right, excellent. Well, yeah, I'm really looking forward to learning more from both of you. You've sort of set things up here about your focus, and it's an area that's super interesting, but one that it's always good to get updates on it if you're not living in that world. Like, I guess I'm not, to sort of hear what the state of the art is. And that's really where I wanted to start. Can you help sort of set the scene for how the space has evolved in terms of frontline workers, the technology that they need today, and maybe a bit about how Microsoft plays in that ecosystem?
And that's a great question. I'll jump in and answer that. This is Chris Tordi. Thank you for that question. It's a real interesting, the evolution for the frontline worker. And if you think back prior to COVID and even before that, frontline workers were typically single-threaded doing one or two things on a shared device, right? And where things are at now is that it's now becoming the worker's personal device where they're doing expanded capabilities. They're able to do more on that device. So let's say they were doing a single-threaded inventory application and logging into that. Now this device is becoming that personal assistant for that worker, enabling them to be more efficient and to do more with their job and what they do at the edge. And when we say the edge is where that frontline worker is working. It's where things happen. It's where the transaction is being transacted. And so rather than just doing an inventory app, what you see now is, hey, I'm going to use this device to do my task management, to do my labor management. Maybe I'll use Microsoft Teams and I'll use it as a collaboration tool between my workers and my managers and an HR connector to look at who can switch shifts with me and do those types of things. Also, what's being more prominent is having AI assistants on these devices. So Now these devices are going to enable voice types of automation to use those pieces. And Mark's going to talk a little bit more about that later on in the podcast. But Mark, I'll turn it over for you for your thoughts on the evolution of the frontline worker.
Thank you, Chris. That frontline worker really is someone within the organization that performs those essential functions and are, customer facing in a retail environment, or, the warehouse worker that is, packing and picking product. That frontline worker is growing more and more as an essential part to business organizations. And, in talking about Microsoft and, the evolution of things, honestly, Jason, Microsoft was the operating system on these enterprise mobile devices several years ago. Microsoft had the Windows Mobile and Windows CE operating system that many of the enterprise mobile device manufacturers supported as the go-to OS on the mobile devices. But then there was a sunset of that operating system and a migration to Android. And honestly, the evolution of Android has flourished the application space for the frontline worker. Now you have applications that Microsoft has developed, as well as others that are supported on these Android-based devices, and the form factors for these mobile devices has changed and evolved as well. You have devices with a trigger handle. You have devices with a keyboard, devices without a keyboard. You have smaller wearable types of devices, as well as devices that can be mounted in a fork truck or inside a vehicle to allow those frontline workers to interface to their applications and have real-time access to information as quickly as possible. And, on the Microsoft side of things, they've really been driving the application use, not only in Dynamics, like in supply chain management, but also in field service, the use of Power Apps and providing the capability to develop applications to run on these mobile devices with specific functions and process flows to their data. And then you have other, functions like Microsoft Teams walkie-talkie and shifts and meet and chat and so on and so forth. And as Chris had mentioned, having that communication process from the end user to other users to maybe help them get their job done faster is all very intricate in today's world. And then the overlying support of the devices and, leveraging a technology like Microsoft Intune to be able to push out applications and settings to the devices really kind of, shows the over-encompassing footprint there that Microsoft has. And I think I'm really probably just scraping the tip of the iceberg in the ways that, Microsoft really has had an application influence on these devices for the frontline worker.
I guess, Jason, I can add to that a little bit. What's interesting about this, too, is that when you're talking about all the added functionality, all the evolution of the frontline worker, this means that handheld computing is becoming a little bit more complicated than it used to be, right? So the operating system needs to be updated and patched. Those types of things need to be maintained properly. And of course, if you have multiple apps that need a single sign-on and things like that, it does become a little more complicated to manage. And one of the things we can do here is to really kind of go through that life cycle support. So IT people that are new at some of these components, we can give them a really good roadmap around how this life cycle support works.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of potential and a lot of available tools, and also, the ability, I think, create sort of tailor-made capabilities that tie into like a Dynamics 365, which Mark, I think you touched on there a moment ago. But could we dive into maybe some of the specific capabilities where mobile workers are taking advantage? I think you mentioned field service, right? You mentioned supply chain scenarios. Do you want to give any maybe more specific examples of where you're seeing those applications in a D365 solution that maybe goes out into the real world?
Actually, in the warehousing space in Microsoft Supply Chain Management, they have a great user interface and mobile application that really, optimizes the workflows for the application and enhance productivity for the end users. You're talking about functions like picks and packs and putaways, cycle counts, reseating. Those are some of the functions that the end users are performing on these devices, and the interface that Microsoft has developed for the application use within the supply chain is very intuitive, easy to work through, and again, leveraging technologies like Intune then can be easily deployable out to the end workers and the mobile devices. Now, with the enterprise-grade, purpose-built mobile devices, you also have technologies built into these devices to make it easier for the end users to perform their functions, like a dedicated barcode scanner integrated into the device, right? So now the end user can quickly capture a barcode to input into the system without having to focus with a camera or something of that nature, and being able to more quickly and effectively perform their job functions to get their tasks completed. So the application interface is fabulous from the end user's perspective to make it much easier for them to process the applications and perform their job functions as needed.
What about from a scaling perspective? I mean, how do D365 applications scale to fit different sizes of teams that may be facing these kinds of scenarios?
Well, the application itself does scale very well for the individuals or the organizations, I should say, because at a higher level within the application, you can optimize the workflows for the specific tasks. Right. And when a specific user signs in to the application, then, they are associated to a specific warehouse, for example. And then, from that process, then they can more quickly and effectively perform their functions that they need to do for their application. And it's not as much of a generic, sign in, because the users are associated to facilities, or can be associated to facilities, to make things flow faster for the end users. And, from a scaling perspective, you can then, deploy devices to multiple warehouses and multiple facilities across the geographic area. So it makes it easier from a management perspective as well, to be able to, from a single interface, be able to manage some of the application functionality within the application interface itself.
Mm-hmm. And with an eye really on the devices in a way that's maybe not the focus in a sort of a desktop environment.
I mean, the application on the mobile device is different from the desktop environment. And, the specific workflows, as I had mentioned earlier, definitely more catered towards those mobile devices. And again, you're talking about handheld mobile computers that, can be, tablet-sized devices and with a 10-inch screen, or, can be more of a smaller handheld unit that has a smaller display. Maybe it's a 4-inch display that the application interface is displayed on. But what's really nice too on these mobile devices is that end user has the capability to adjust some settings. For example, the background color and the text color, maybe even the font size or some of the button size, are adjustable settings that are saved to that user. So then it makes it easier for that specific user to be able to see and, the fields that they need to see to perform their jobs more effectively. And it's really kind of a great tool set from that perspective to be able to adjust per user how, the interface really is shown for that individual.
And just to make sure I understand it, would that be like accounting for variations in sort of the work environment, lighting, climate, what they're wearing while they're doing their job, factors like that play into people also interacting with these computers?
Well, I mean, the devices themselves do have an adjustable display to be able to, check for ambient light, see what and adjust the display level. But the end users definitely have that capability to, change it from a dark background to a light background. And some users just have more specific preferences to how the display is shown, make it easier for themselves in their day-to-day operations and how easy it is for them to use that interface.
Yeah. And I want to move on to another topic that I'm certainly interested to learn more about, which is sort of the direct relationship to, other technology. RFID is the one I wanted to talk about first. Can you talk a little bit about how RFID is being integrated with some of this device technology as it relates to D365 today?
Yeah, RFID is interesting, right? So it's been around for a long time. It's been around for like 30 years and evolving for 30 years. But to kind of summarize where we're at now with RFID, it's never been easier to afford, integrate, and implement than it is now. And there's a lot of factors for that. One is the technology for reading the tags have become so advanced and so flexible that there's a lot of options for very dynamic ways to read tags. And that leads to so much better read rates and things like that. So the technology has improved. The cost of tags has always been kind of going down. So that trend has been going down. It's now down for the passive tags that's in a label, down to like the 5-8 cents range, which is very reasonable. And there's a lot of requirements out there that are really driving the demands for having items uniquely identified. And realistically, this is putting pressure on manufacturing to manufacture items with these unique identifier tags. And the advantage of that is that's something we can take advantage in the supply chain for asset tracking and inventory. So RFID has really evolved into a spot where it's very, very usable. The endpoints as well, the readers, have become a lot smarter. Back 20 years ago, there wasn't a lot of things that happened on the edge where things happened. So the actual reader itself is now able to filter, make decisions, and sort. So that data that's being sent up for processing is more refined, right? And that data that's transferring to the cloud is a lot less than it used to be because that is kind of sorted out data, which makes things a lot easier when it comes to integration. And really, there's a lot of cloud data management things that happen to absorb these critical tracking events. And there's a lot of new tools on the cloud for analytics and integration around this information. So we're really at a point where we can do these projects a lot more easy, a lot more economical, and there's a lot of advantages you can really take into account when it comes to RFID. And it's a very easy technology to phase yourself into. In other words, you can do some RFID tag reading at a certain point, and then you can expand that because you have the RFID tag there ready to be used. You can use it in other spots of your supply chain. And as you prepare information and as you prepare product for the retail space, they're going to want to see it in a certain way, in a certain fashion. And you can really coordinate all of that together.
I would actually like to add on in regards to that RFID side of things in regards mobile devices. As I stated earlier, the mobile device is a multi-purpose tool these days. And many of these devices can be plugged into a sled. And leveraging an RFID sled that is then capable of reading RFID tags. So now you have this device that you had been using, maybe for directly with Microsoft D365. You turn around, you either Bluetooth or plug it into a sled, and now you're able to leverage the RFID technology and integrating into that side of the application process as well. So it really is very helpful for the end users to have that multi-purpose utility, if you will.
And think about the power of that device and what it can do. Let's say you're receiving apparel and each one is uniquely identified. And when I say uniquely identified, we know lot numbers, we know sizes, we know colors and all of those types of things, individual of the item. So it knows specifically what that item is, all packaged in a box. This RFID reader that Mark had referenced can read the license plate on top and then read everything inside that box without opening it, going through it, or anything like that. This box could also go through a portal or antenna with a reader area and that can be automatically read as well. So this type of technology is very, very powerful and can bring a lot to the table when it comes to efficiencies and how you do asset tracking and inventory.
So given all these advances, what would you say is driving the demand on this technology today?
I think, Jason, what's driving the demand is just the need to track the assets and where they've been and where they have been going. And that information, that data that's collected in between is so valuable. And RFID can bring a lot to that process just by the automation that it brings. For instance, there's things that are driving this in the industry. So GS1 industry standards, they have standards for passing information about products across companies that use global trade identification numbers or unique identification numbers to those items that contain extra information such as lot number, where it's been picked, if it's in the food industry. If it's an item or apparel, it knows uniquely about that item. And retailers are going to want to know about that information that they're receiving as they receive it. And RFID is a great way to instantly get that information across. And so there's standards out there that are pushing these pieces to come together, like FSMA 204, which is food safety standards, which require all these critical tracking events from what happens to point A to point B to be recorded. And as the end point or consumer receives this, they have that information in that history as they receive it. So these types of industry needs are really driving the demand for this RFID technology. And what's great about it, it can be phased in very, very easily. And it makes this an easy technology to dip your toe in the water.
To add on to that too, Jason, and in many ways, society is more instantaneous feedback, instantaneous information, and leveraging RFID technology helps take some of that human interaction component out of the process, which helps facilitate a faster turnaround of data and information to feed into the system. So it just from a high level, really kind of just helps the automation process of getting that data as up to date as soon as possible.
All right. And I wanted to move on to another area of technology I think sounds super interesting, and I know your team has done quite a bit of work on, and that's voice. Can you tell me some of the latest advances in voice technology and how those maybe are important to a Dynamics 365 organization?
I'm happy to jump in and talk about voice here. And actually, it's an interesting topic from a mobile device perspective. You can leverage the same mobile device that you use for your application interface today, and you could leverage voice in several different ways. One would be in regards to maybe a directed process for the end user. We have a partner company that we do a lot of work with called Mountain Leverage that has a platform that is essentially a connector to D365 and allows for directed picks, if you will, for the end user as one example. So the end user essentially can take a wireless Bluetooth headset and pair it to their mobile device. And leveraging, the microphone and headset in that device and the Mountain Leverage application running on that mobile computer can then be directed to perform function like a pick for an order. And it will take them, and we had actually demonstrated this application workflow at the Summit NA conference a couple months back down in San Antonio. And you can take that application and basically step a user through a warehouse and take them to a specific aisle, to a specific bin, tell them how many product to pick. The end user confirms that information, confirms where they are in the flow, and the application drives the process for that end user to be able to complete that process application workflow. So, and actually that Ascend platform is able to maybe have some different workflows occur that may not necessarily be part of the D365 environment, but they're able to architect things for that end user through their Ascend platform. And then that platform really as a connector back into D365. So it really is a great architecture for the end users to perform their tasks just on that same device through that application interface.
And voice automation, I think, even goes further than just a voice picking app, right? Because if you look at Microsoft Teams can use voice applications to communicate. AI assistants are becoming very, very popular. And all these require that you speak to the device. And what's great about these purpose-driven devices is they're made to actually work in the warehouse, in the retail types of environments where you can actually do those things. And that's why it's important when you look at the devices, you look at the components and make sure that they are purpose-driven with microphone noise cancellation and able to have the proper cameras and things to be used. And that's real important to look at those components as you're fitting the right technology for the use case and the tasks those users will be using.
It's a very good point, Chris. I mean, you almost look at voice right now as a three-headed monster for these devices because you can use it for that specific function, as I was describing with mountain leverage. You can do interpersonal communications between individuals in the warehouse, as well as doing voice integration directly with Copilot and other AI type of engines to be able to address other business areas. So it really is ever evolving in that space, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, that is super interesting. And I've got to think that with, the momentum that Microsoft certainly is talking about with introducing voice into some of these Copilot scenarios, this new integration that you're talking about with Mountain Leverage Ascend, and just the range of different industry scenarios like you're talking about from retail to inside of a warehouse to probably, a dozen others that I'm sure are top of mind. There's going to be, momentum or at least, demand building for more of these scenarios, right, to come online and to be put into play, I guess by the next time we talk at least. Yeah. Anything else you're looking forward to? Anything else we haven't talked about that you wanted to mention about what you're really looking forward to as you work with clients on some of these capabilities?
No, Jason, I think we had a great discussion here. I really appreciate you pulling us in for the conversation. And we're excited. We're excited about where this is going. We're excited about the new trends in these technologies. We're excited to bring these pieces and some of the uniqueness that we do here at enVista to the Microsoft D365 world.
I agree. And, it's just honestly feel like we're just at the top of the iceberg in many ways in which this technology is going to be able to be leveraged, with various sensors, various voice technologies. It's all ever evolving. And like you said, when we talk again, who knows what we're going to be looking at from additional technologies and integration components that we haven't even discussed yet or haven't really even come out yet. So it's a great time to be in this industry and love to see the integration of the technologies with the business flows.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you both helping me and our listeners to understand really what the state of the art is here. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. We're looking forward to the next one.
This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. My thanks once again to Chris and Mark for joining me. And this message from enVista. Do you want to learn more or discuss your needs around mobile devices, voice automation, or Dynamics 365? Visit enVista's website at www.envistacorp.com. We'll also include links to related blog posts from the team in the show notes. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can reach me by email, jason@msdynamicsworld.com. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.